Shortly, but first I would like to ask one of them to step into the spotlight to share an important message. This event definitely requires commitment and dedication, and this guy has really gone above and beyond. Shortly after he had signed on as a dancer in Dancing for Our Stars, he landed a big new job in Ontario, and he only agreed to take the job on the condition that they would allow him to come back and honor his commitment. So he has been flying back and forth to do his rehearsals. But you know what? Overcoming obstacles is nothing new for Royden. We graduated from St. FX together 25 years ago, and I know him as a humble guy. His Cape Breton mother taught him not to talk a lot about himself, but you know what? Tonight we've convinced him to do it for a good cause. Bridgeway. Please welcome Royden Trainor.
Thank you very much. A little shorter than what I would like. Good evening, everybody, and I hope you're drinking, because it'll make me a lot funnier. I want to take a few moments, and I actually use my iPhone here to try to make sure that I don't speak too long, but I wanted to talk briefly a little bit about what today is really all about. And let me begin it this way. Table 6, you're lazy. Table 33, you're just not applying yourself. Table 29, you have to go to the resource class now and you can join us after dessert. Table 12, are you listening? Table 15, you're just dumb. Now, these are words which kids hear every day, kids with learning disabilities. These are words which kids have heard in the classroom too often. They hear in the recess and in the schoolyard far too often. And what is even more debilitating about that is that they hear it inside. I was one of those kids who felt those things and saw those things. And I was one of those kids that had, like many kids that faced the opportunity to go to Bridgeway Academy, a real stark choice before them. I, at a relatively late age, was diagnosed as having a fairly severe form of dyslexia and dysgraphia. And if I go back and read the reports, if I read that much, if I go back and read the reports, there's some pretty scary stuff in there. Scary stuff which says this student should modify their expectation about going to university. They should lower their expectation about going to university because that is only going to cause anxiety and suffering and disappointment because he's not cut out to go to university. This student is a little bit too talkative. This student sometimes is difficult. We've made him sit always at the front of the class. This student will never get out of grade 10. We highly recommend that he attend the vocational school because next year we think they're going to change the grading level to get into vocational school to grade 10, and if he moves quickly, he can get into a grade 9 based program. To which my father said, I have a completely disassembled lawn tractor in my garage, which Royden took apart because he felt he wanted to know how it worked. It will not be put back together by Royden. I have had to hire a mechanic to put it back together. The vocational school is not an option. True story. I wanted to tell you that story because for me, I was a truly fortunate child. And even today I think about how fortunate it is that I was who I was and I am who I am. That I had a set of parents from a professional family, relatively affluent family, I suppose, for whom there was great expectations that everyone would attend school, for whom it was easy enough for the school board or the school system to agree that maybe in this particular case, there's something that's a little odd. There's something unusual because the kid is bright, he's just not achieving. There's something that's not working. And they could understand that that was a possibility. It was easy to believe. that Dr. Trainor, who happened to be the chair of the school board at the time, kid might need to have a different form of assessment or different options. It was easier for me. I go back home now on occasion to my home in Port Hawkesbury, and I see kids that I went to resource class with, as they then called it, special ed, as they called it, C9, as it was, which is still burnt in my mind, C9. You know, even that part wasn't done particularly well, because C9 was on the second floor, and all the age cohorts were on the next floor of it. So as you came off recess, you would come in the door, and the grade 5s would go up. The people who were grade 5s but were in the special ed class went down. And I've seen I go back home now and I see those kids who didn't have parents like Mary and Royden Trainor, kids whose parents didn't have the resources that no matter what was necessary to make sure that Royden could succeed, that those resources were available to him to do that. And I see those kids, I'd like to say they're driving cabs, but if there's bad driving as I am, they ought not do that. Some are not alive anymore. Many of them are grossly unemployed. And every time I see them, I know that could have been me, but for a very different future. It could have been me. I was no more bright than they were. I just had a set of opportunities to make a difference that otherwise wouldn't have happened, but for the fact of the accident, the luck of my birth. And Bridgeway is an effort, and I said in my opening comments, if any of you have seen the tape, is that one of the things that drives me is that I was lucky, and where Bridgeway makes the bridge is to try to remove luck. What about the kids who don't have Mary and Royden Trainor for their mom and dad? What about those kids? Do they have a chance to succeed or not? Can we create an opportunity to release their potential? And I have to tell you, I have a great problem with the whole argument or the phraseology of accommodation, which is a phrase which is used heavily in policy circles for education. Make an accommodation, which seems to be a very defensive thing. I really believe that working with children with learning disabilities who learn in radically different ways, you're not making an accommodation, you're finding ways to release potential. You're finding ways to grab creativity and let it go. I was asked recently, could you explain to me what is it? I don't understand. You seem clever. These kids are clever. You'll see some tapes this evening that shows these kids are clever. I don't understand why they're not achieving. And I found a simple example that will offend both people who are aficionados of Apple and of IBM and Microsoft. So if I managed to equally offend you, I would have achieved my objective. There were years where Apple was doing its great work, its fantastic work, very creative, object-oriented based technology. But ordinarily, it was basically people who had hygiene problems and were into Dungeons and Dragons that were playing with it. Then IBM and Microsoft still dominated the world. And they could never talk to each other. And if you did something on Apple that was a Nobel Peace Prize quality material, but it couldn't get translated to the Microsoft platform, it simply didn't count. Well, that's an awful lot of what having a learning disability is all about. It can feel like. You can have the next great Canadian novel. You can have the next brilliant idea, but it's trapped simply in a format. And for years we spent some time actually, remember the time they had dual formats? You would have an Apple format and a IBM format, both in both computers, and they tried them. Well, the reality is that they've created bridges. You're seeing the connection here now? Bridgeway. They've created bridges between those two technologies. So all the exciting things about the right brain, about the apple, about the ways that many, many children learn who have learning disabilities, those areas are able to be released. And could you imagine the world today without an apple? Could you imagine the world today, imagine your classrooms today, if the statistics are correct, where 10% of the population, 10% of those students weren't allowed to be pulled into the rest of what's going on in the classroom simply because they were on an apple. Imagine if today, at your own desks, at your own tables, the menus were in Braille, and only one of you, and only Braille, and everybody but one of you could read it. Would you get up and leave? Would you pretend you were sick? Would you get in a fight so you wouldn't have to? So you get excused, so you don't have to explain it. That's kind of what it's like to have a learning disability. You know what you want. You know you're hungry. You know the food you want, and you have the knowledge. But the device and the tool that's used to get that knowledge, that language, has been chosen by the world based on the Microsoft, based on the 90% of the way the world works. Imagine if we find better ways of releasing all of that knowledge, all of that creativity into the right brain. And here's the thing. When we do that, it's not just LD children we help. When we approach our far more creative ideas, far more innovative ideas of approaching education, of assessing education, of rewarding education, the more we do that, the more open the workplace becomes, not just for children with learning disabilities, adults with learning disabilities, but Aboriginal communities, cultural communities. Because when you open the door just a bit to let the light of innovation in, it shines everywhere. And that's why I think that what Bridgeway is doing today is more important than just helping children with learning disabilities. It is a beacon about how to do things a little bit differently, about how to have a truly child-centered education. For me, it wasn't a Bridgeway, it was a school very much like Bridgeway. I would have gone to that vocational school but for this dramatic intervention, which meant I left my family and my home, but for a period of time went into a very intensive program like Bridgeway, which allowed me to come back and go into the system. I would not be standing here otherwise. I might be stuck in the basement with an old apple that doesn't communicate with anybody. So that's what, thank you. So just think of the potential of what we're able to release. And so I would also argue finally that there's not learning disabilities. Let me say that there are teaching disabilities. There are assessment deficits. There are creativity disabilities. And so should I not instead be able to stay at the end of the table, table 15, you're innovative. And see, look, that's funny, 15, 51, this table's 51, sorry. Table 51, you're innovative. Table 52, you're very creative. Table 38, you have, that's out of the box thinking that I needed to hear more of. 29, you're really thinking about teams and how this is going to work. 40, you're looking at how this is going to look down the road, not just the next 20 minutes. Table 10, I never thought of that. We've been doing it the other way for 20 years. Why would we change it in a different way now? Those are the types of things that we want to be able to say instead of the language that we've heard already. And for those of you who are employers, and there are many of you here, you're going to see Bridgeway on some resumes. There's a university president here. You may see them on some application forms. And what I want you to know about these folks is that if they have got this far, they're not just kids that know their gazintas and their English. They know themselves. They know the extra work it takes. They're not Pollyanna. They know what it takes. They know how to make mistakes. They know how to ask for help because they need help. They know how to work in teams. They know how to say, I'm sorry, I missed that. They know how to listen. These are people you want. These are people you need. And they can be your new leaders in your companies and organizations, because old thinking has taken us so far. Maybe it's time for some new thinking. Finally, I want to tell you what this is really all about. And I'm going to ask two very special people to come up for a second. Nia and Maria, where are you? Don't embarrass me now. Oh, I see you. I see you. You can come right over here. Come on. Come on, you look great. Yes, that's okay. Come see me. So, not above exploiting children. These are two very wonderful nieces of mine. Maria, very recently, I've been watching having some real struggles in school, struggles that I recognized. She's a very clever girl, aren't you? Yes. And so finally, her mom and dad, at great expense, did have her tested, and what we thought might be true, in fact, is true. And she does have some very significant challenges with respect to dyslexia and dysgraphia. And Bridgeway may be in her future, but we'll see, eh? But she's a very special girl. Now, I don't want the fact that she's not the daughter of Dr. and Mrs. Trainor to have a factor as to whether or not she gets a chance. And Nia, her big sister, something that we sometimes forget about learning disabilities is that it is a family concern, and it affects everybody. Mom and dad sometimes have to spend more time with the learning disabled child. And sometimes big sister has to help teaching, don't they? And that makes a difference. So when we're thinking about what this is all about, you know, I figure I'm probably going to be okay myself right now, although every day we run into an example where, like, I wonder if I actually took that time off when I left the office on Tuesday. But we still make some of those mistakes. But these two, and the hundreds like them, are what Bridgeway is all about. You should have every opportunity in the world, because you deserve it, sweetie, and so do you. Thanks. So I am now going to call my fellow dancers out to join me on the stage. Now, I'm tempted to give them all wrong names so that you'll vote inappropriately. Apparently, that's a very popular thing to do these days. It's as political as I could get, sorry. So I'm just calling out my fellow dancers. Please welcome the Dance for the Stars 2013. You guys can stay with me. This is my dance. This is my dance partner. Here. There we go. Woo! Wave. Wave. All right, guys, let's go down and say hi. Good to see you. Come on in, let's go. Yeah. Let's go. All right, okay. All right, okay. All right, okay. Return to the Mac. Get up what it is, what it does, what it is, what it isn't. Looking for a better way to get up out of bed instead of getting on the internet and checking a new hit. Me get up. First shot, come strut walking. A little bit of humble, a little bit of cautious. Somewhere between like Rocky and Cosby's for the game. Nope, y'all can't copy yet. Glad moonwalking, and this here is our party. My posse's been on Broadway, and we did it all way. Chrome music. I shed my skin and put my bones into everything I record to it. And yeah, I'm on. Let that stage light go and shine on down. Got that Bob Barker suit game and Plinko in my style. Money, stay on my craft and stick around for those pounds. But I do that to pass the torch and put on for my town. Trust me, on my INDEPENDENT
NT shit hustling. Chasing dreams since I was 14 with the 4-track bustin'. Halfway across that city with the back question. Labels out here, now they can't tell me nothing. We give that to the people, spread it across the country. Labels out here, now they can't tell me nothing. We give it to the people, spread it across the country.
Can we go back? This is the moment, tonight is the night. We'll fight till it's over, so we put our hands up like the ceiling can't hold us. Like the ceiling can't hold us. Can we go back? This is the moment, tonight is the night. We'll fight till it's over, so we put our hands up like the ceiling can't hold us. Like the ceiling can't hold us.
Now, can I kick it? Thank you, yeah, I'm so damn grateful. I grew up really wanna go fronts, but that's what you get when Wu-Tang raised you. Y'all can't stop me, go hard like I got an 808 in my heartbeat, and I'm eating at the beat.